Hi guys, hi everyone. Thanks a lot for joining in. I am Chitransh. I am your host and one of the co-founders of GoComet. Um, as a company, we generally do these webinars regularly in order to build some interesting information or thesis in specifically in these times of COVID. So today we have Mr. Ankur with us. He has been a supply chain and supply chain leader over and has over 20 years of experience in supply chain and procurement industry. As a industry leader, one of the key areas that he has worked in is building business processes and learnings so that they expand aggressively into new markets. So one of the biggest businesses for Polyplex and the biggest units that Polyplex drives is Thailand, and it's an interesting mix of culture. It's an interesting mix of all kinds of nuances that come to building a large business specifically out of Thailand, and for a company which is largely Indian. So I really welcome Mr. Ankar. Thanks a lot for joining in today, sir.
Thank you,
So
Divyansh.
yeah. So any words that you would like to say first, and then we can go into that.
I was just going through the intro you had given, and I was just wondering, is it me? But thanks a lot for introducing me, and I welcome everyone who is joining us for this webinar. And I hope that we will be able to make sense to all of them.
Thank you, sir. So let's quickly discuss. So first of all, what is the biggest learn? So let's start a little early, right? So I mean, COVID happened, and I'm sure that it impacted your business as well. So what is the biggest learning or the biggest lesson that you personally or from a Polyplex point of view you have learned over time, yeah, over this year?
See, there are two, three things that, okay, COVID happened and it impacted a lot of businesses.
Yes.
But for us as a packaging business, it actually helped, right? Because a lot of demand grew up, and there was a lot of requirement for the packaged food and all that stuff.
Mm.
But okay, that's something which is temporary and which will normalize very soon. As far as what you learned was that one is that you understand that globalization was a word which everyone used to coin in, that now people are
Yeah.
saying, okay, let's be diversified, let's have different ways of doing business, and trying to be global but local. Local is the word now people are
Yeah.
trying to use, that you have to be have a mix of both,
Mm.
because we saw a lot of supply chain interruptions, and you have to manage things locally, try and see that you get things nearby,
Mm.
not if in your country, maybe in the vicinity of the other countries where you can source easily or faster.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, okay, you have to get away from the traditional way of working,
Mm.
pen, paper, telephone, that had all kind of given way,
Mm.
and you were so hooked to, and you were forced to look at technological advances and how do you use technology to help business,
Mm.
especially in the supply chain domain.
Yeah.
Because the easy way of calling up the transporter and asking where is my, how do I get booking, is the shipping line working, and when that was not helping, because
Mm.
people were working with lower staff, number of people were low,
Mm.
most of the offices, a lot of offices were hit by COVID. So unfortunately or fortunately, you have to then depend on what is online, let's
Yes.
see.
Mm.
And that's how things have to be, and I think a lot of people have started thinking of it.
Yeah, that is interesting. That is interesting. And but let's talk because most of our audience is very technical today. I was going through, and most of the people come from the industry. So tell
Yeah.
me like little bit, like from a sourcing point of view, how did it impact you? I mean, whatever details you can share, and how did you ramp yourself up to the challenge of probably diversifying the sourcing, and what happened around that?
See, there are two three things, there were indicators that you may actually feel that this is going to happen in as early as February, right?
Yeah.
when you start looking at things and people start talking about COVID, there were some countries started in Europe and all
Yes.
after China.
Hmm.
We had actually started looking at it and very, very closely monitoring it, that okay, what is happening, and started stocking up, at
Hmm.
least for the things which we were outsourcing or
Yes.
we were importing.
Hmm.
And fortunately, unfortunately, as a process, we have always had a situation where we want to have multiple suppliers for certain products, which are very, very critical for our
Hmm.
production.
Hmm.
So we started, pinging up those, uh, taking up the higher cost inventory, maybe if need be, and
Hmm.
piling and looking at alternate ways of transportation also.
Yes.
So can we take different routings? Can we take air? Can we, do something?
Hmm.
And fortunately for us, because we are so diversified and we geographically, that we have so many units across the world,
Hmm.
that we were able to manage that shift. Not every area was impacted that bad
Hmm.
at one given point in time.
I understand.
So we were able to do that. The most important thing was that okay, we started early. We
Hmm.
started looking at it early and kind of started taking actions accordingly on
And
the
during
chip.
these times, sorry for interruption, sir. During these times, a lot of our customers are facing this challenge, right? Suddenly they need to source new suppliers, or the volumes are varying, the business contracts are varying. So most of the people are going into this question of, whether we should prioritize the source or how do we prioritize the service, like source versus service dichotomy, like in general, like what should we do? Did you face that as well? And like, how did
I
you?
mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, that is the challenge. When we say, let's say, when we talk about diversification, most of the people say, okay, I diversify my sourcing by, developing more vendors, let's say,
Yes. Yes.
or changing the source. We say, okay, as people were talking about, let us be more dependent on a local supply.
Hmm.
Now, let us look at from a different point of view that
Hmm.
when you are servicing, the same situation is with your customers, right?
Yes. Yes.
They are also in the same boat. They
Hmm.
also want supply security.
Hmm.
And okay, so for us, because most of our customers are packaging based and the demand was going up, so that become much more critical for us to do that. So when you look at local supplies, you have to make sure that your own sourcing is
Hmm.
stable. And that's why when I said that, fortunately for us as a policy, we have different sourcing plate available with us,
Hmm.
and we keep it, and we don't want to keep all our eggs in one basket.
Hmm.
So we had a bunch of suppliers where we can, I mean, let's say plan B. Okay, it's
Hmm.
not a very economically viable plan B,
Yes.
but there was a plan B. So obviously, at that point in time, everything economically it became a uh, backseat. It took a backseat, but availability and supply surety became the first priority. Service
Yes.
levels obviously got impacted everywhere,
Hmm.
and so then sometimes you have to kind of take that humanitarian view that okay, you can't just force the gun and say okay, I have a contract, you have to supply. We have
That
to
is
see
very
that
difficult.
the factories under attack, people are not able to work.
Hmm.
Uh, Eventually, it is a human thing, right? You
Yes.
touch the human cord.
Yes.
So that's how.
That is a very interesting take on things.
So yeah, I mean, culturally, you can't really disconnect yourself, right? You have
Yeah.
to be there. The cultural integration is the most important part of any business success.
And let's say, I mean, yeah, we are still, I mean, very much into the pandemic. Hopefully, it will end soon. But like, what are some cultural impacts? Since you are so for everyone from the attendees, Polyplex is already present in multiple geographies. Obviously, India is there, Southeast Asia. They are present in Thailand, Indonesia. They're present in Europe, Turkey, and they're present in US. So they are actually a globalized kind of, and these places they have their manufacturing operations. they are doing business across multiple countries, but these are the key areas where they have manufacturing operations. And Mr. Ankur leads most of these things. So, sir, from a cultural integration point of view, what was the impact of COVID, and how did you, ramp up to the challenge? And what are the key impacts now? Because, I mean, every country there are different situations. Thailand is now going out of lockdown. US is going again into lockdown. Europe, I don't know what is happening there. So it's actually a lot of chaos. I mean,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, culturally, every geography, reacted differently,
yes,
and it all depends on how people behave. What is the people's view on government policies and all.
yes,
As you rightly said, India is a different way. Indians look at it a different way. Thais look at it a different way. So everyone was looking at very differently.
Mhm.
Fortunately for us, we inculcate a culture of family within Polyplex, and that's the view we take. Okay, so as a company, you have to take both views. You cannot be just be very lenient. That because you have to run a manufacturing unit, you have to continue with that discipline which is required to run a unit. And side by side, you have to take that view also. So we started creating flexibilities within the group. Okay, we said fine. So if you are not feeling well, you have to self-assess yourself.
yes,
You may actually skip the office without any kind of repercussion to you. But then you have to be true to your job. And most of the people, and generally, whatever culture you work with, one thing is that integrity of the people is across. You'll find across the globe. That is something which is there. And if you believe on them, that belief comes back. They will actually pay back, right? So the most important part for culturally integrated system is that you understand them, they understand you. So you don't impose your way of working on them. Neither their way of working can be imposed 100% on your way of. So it has to be an amalgamation of both. You take good of both and try and match. It's like a marriage. So you spend some time together, you understand each other. It is very important to understand each other and then take that. So I think fortunately for us, that was the way, and people responded very well. And they understood that, okay, these are times, and because we had situations where, the team members were not able to attend office. Maybe because they were not there, they were stuck in the lockdown and whatever. So there were a lot of stresses within the team which was present, but they understood, okay, this is our family, we have to take care. And okay, I can, today I am helping my team member, tomorrow if required, my team member will help me. That was the belief which was, which flew through. And that is where the way, it happens when you culturally integrate. If you kind of impose your way of working, then it becomes very difficult, because then people don't own the process. They don't own the company, right? You have to make sure that we have to make sure that they believe that they are the stakeholders of the company. Then only it happens.
Yes, sir. Another question on this, and it's a bit tangential from our discussion, but a lot of companies during these times faced losses, uncertain demands, and disrupted supply chains. What are some tips? Like you handle a huge staff under you. Like it's probably like a 4-tiered structure from what I remember, right? What are you like? Say 3 suggestions that you would give to a lot of business leaders that are there on the call today. Like if they have to lay off because of the business situation, what are the 3 suggestions? I mean, it's not a very easy discussion, right? And probably you might have gone through this as well. But what are the 3? I mean, things that they could consider while laying off staff, or letting go of certain divisions. How to kind of be more considerate, or how to kind of maintain this culture? What are the 3 takeaways, or what are the 3 suggestions in order to maintain culture?
See, okay, personally, if you ask us, we have not been into this situation quite often, because generally the layoffs is not something which is the word in Polyplex.
Yes,
at least I will be saying that I am fortunate to be saying this.
Yes.
But okay, few times we had to do that. We had to ask people to go. So generally, what we have seen is what works is that if you have decided, okay, this has to be done, and this is the way you have to do it. The best way to do it is you call up the person, sit with them, break the ice. Don't break the news first. To me, I would just talk it through, discuss with them, make them understand the issue we are facing, and try and see that, what will you do if you are in my position, kind of situation. And generally, people understand that.
Yes.
And then then obviously you have to tell them that, okay, unfortunately we can't continue like this, we have to let you go. Then generally we are giving enough time for the people to find new opportunities, helping them out. Let's say if you have to recommend someone, you can recommend. I mean, I have seen personally that I have told people that if you want to give recommendation, you give my reference. I mean, if I have got a call, I will be referring you. So those are things which you create a family. Okay, as a family, I am in a problem, and this is the best solution. I feel if you have another solution, we are ready to hear to that, and we can try and find a mutually agreeable solution. But if this is what it is, then let's try and see. And we have always welcomed them back if situation is normalized and something like that. So I think people have to be considerate enough, and people have to take that humanitarian ground, make them understand. And if you are able to explain them properly, 99% chances are that people will hear to you. I mean, the most difficult thing is that you just go and tell them, okay, I don't need you from tomorrow. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's not the way we will do it.
That's a very nice thing. So for everyone, that's the underlying fact, is that there should be inherent belief in people that they will understand you, and there should be mutual respect and understanding about everything. That's a beautiful thing to say. So let's come back, digress a little bit. So come back. So there's a lot of there's a lot of talk about greenfield expansion these days. Right? And there was a PwC report that was talking on this. So what are I mean, first, in your words, if you can explain greenfield expansion to the attendees, and then we can talk about the PwC report as well on this, on the greenfield expansion, sir.
Greenfield is generally, I mean, it is the term which we use for, absolutely new, starting from the scratch, let's say. So you decided that, okay, you are not there in that geography or in that place, you want to be there. So there are two ways. Either you go there and you try and buy someone else, you acquire someone. That is one way of getting into that market. The second way is, okay, you explore that market yourself, you do the homework, you start it from the ground. That is what generally greenfield is. So there are advantages, disadvantages of both. When you acquire someone, the market access is very, very quick. You get to the market immediately, and you automatically get the present market share, whatever the company you're acquiring. But then the disadvantage is the assets are older. They may not be as efficient. And obviously, in the world where we are, and that rule always applies, fittest of the survival. I mean, the survival of the fittest, let's say. So you have to remain fit. You have to keep that fat out of your system if you want to survive longer. So in our kind of industry, the technological advancements are much, much faster. So generally we have seen that, okay, greenfield is much better, works for us than any other acquiring or brownfield, let's say.
Got it. So there's a PwC report that talks about greenfield expansion during the times of COVID.
Right.
So what are your thought process from that for that, and what has Polyplix on doing these things, or are there any thoughts internally to do something around that? I mean, whatever you can share.
Okay, I mean, let's say every such situation brings in opportunities with it. As Polyplus, we keep evaluating expansion plans or investment plans. So small investment we keep doing to technically add value to our system. In fact, let's say we already announced our expansion in the US in, I think, February or March.
Yes.
So I would not say it was because of COVID, but okay. So it was there already, and then I mean, we keep evaluating that. As far as the expansion during the COVID, so generally what I have seen is that when there are good times, people take a very, very open or very free view. The spending is much more. But when there are hard times, then they start curbing the spending. That's something which I don't think is a very, very okay. You have to be mindful of what you're doing.
Yes, sir.
Wasteful spending is always not right.
Yeah.
So you have to keep your eyes open, and whenever you are able to expand, you should. And these times are, in my view, if people are aggressively looking for expansion, would be a very good time, because one is that there are a lot of businesses which are waiting for some opportunity. So that way, business-wise, you should get good rates. There are a lot of, let's say, if you are expanding, you have to buy machines, you have to have land, you have to have civil contractor working with you and all that stuff, right? All these guys were not in business for, let's say, 4, 5, 6 months. So there is a lot of desperation in the system. So why not take that advantage? It also means that you have to shell out your own reserves.
Yes.
Right. So, but then no pain, no gain.
Well said, sir. So when you talk about, so internally, I'm sure, let's say for an expansion point of view, specifically in your case, you started US, there would be a lot of case. How do you make a case for budget internally? And how do you basically build that case? What are the key tenets to kind of build that case of, getting a budget approved for greenfield expansion during these times?
No, as I said that, the fundamentals have to talk about it.
Yes.
If you see any expansion, whether we are doing it or anybody else is doing it, it has to stand itself on fundamental things, right? Fundamentally, if everything is going fine, then these small ups and downs will keep coming in the business.
Right.
So you have to believe that, okay, you have done your data analysis correct. You have understood the market. You know how the market is growing. And you know that when I enter, I am not going to disturb the market. I am going to add value. See, if you are entering the market and you think that you will destroy value and you enter the market, in my belief, the market will not welcome you that way. And as I said, and in my article also, it was there that the ecosystem is always bigger than you. Yeah, and you have to be mindful of the fact that the ecosystem can actually, if it decides, can actually throw you off.
Right.
So if your fundamentals are right and long-term view, if you take, you have to take a long-term view. If you are investing, you have to say, okay, my business will run for 20 years, 30 years, 10 years maybe. So at least for that time frame, it has to work, and your projections and your demand supply has to support that 10 years. If that is correct, then obviously there is no difficulty. But if you are just saying, okay, currently my demand is suddenly going up, and you are not looking at 2 years after what happens, then obviously you are not making a wise decision. I mean, it could be a spur in demand just for the moment. You can't really invest to cater to that demand, right? What will happen if everything gets normalized? People work on relationships. I've seen that, and people work on long-term relationships. So you can enter the market and you can say, okay, I'll drop my prices and I'll offer you. They will take that. Okay, I will buy for some time. But definitely when it comes to supply security, when it comes to such times as COVID, and we have faced this, our long-term suppliers, they said, okay, whatever needs to be done, Polyplex needs to be served.
Yes.
That is what we have earned in so many years. That, okay, our supplier said, I am cutting down everyone else. I am not cutting down Polyplex, whatever happens.
Wow. That's amazing. again goes back to the same thing that it's fundamental ecosystem and the trust that you have in your suppliers and your employees
Absolutely.
and your customers. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. Let's talk about, let's say, about sourcing of freight in particular. Let's say you do a greenfield expansion, and at certain point of time you need to source freight. So how do you plan to do that, and what are key strategies when you do that, in the beginning of any new market, because your volumes might be ramping up and there's a bit of uncertainty.
See, that's where I said that now people have to start looking at using technology more
Hmm.
than the. And I would agree to that when we were expanding last time, and it was Indonesia, and
Hmm.
we were not using technology that much.
Yes.
We were dependent on the traditional ways of finding the freight forwarders, who are the people there, meeting them,
Hmm.
understanding them, and then taking quotes from them and all that.
Hmm.
But I feel that now technology can actually give you that all before you enter the market.
Hmm.
Let's say example, we started using GoComet. We have the data on that. So our own data, and you have data of the market. So uh, if you want to search that from, let's say, Jakarta to US, what are the different lines which are there, and what are the rates being offered
Hmm.
historically and currently, and what. So you get a trend.
Hmm.
Now, if you have those kind of numbers with you, because when you are in the market, when you are meeting the freight forwarders, you get the freight quotes for that moment.
Hmm.
So what you do is that, okay, my freight from Jakarta is now this much, and from Thailand is this much. This is the gap. Assuming that this gap will remain, and this is the sustainable gap, whatever it is,
Hmm.
then we say, okay, we have Thailand's 5 years data on the freight, assuming that will remain the same. So this is the trend, and is it working for us or not?
Hmm.
That may or may not be true,
Hmm.
because that gap, whatever it is, may be momentarily there,
Hmm.
due to the market factors. You never know. But you have something which is worldwide available. You have a data which is not yours, but it is there on the public domain.
Hmm.
You can actually see that, okay, historically what has happened, how
Hmm.
it has moved, and what are the driving factors which are actually making that change,
Hmm.
and is it making sense for you to do that or not. That is one. And personally, if you ask me, I had to do an analysis on the US freights, for example. So what all we capture is that, okay, when it left us, what is the cost we paid, and when it reached the destination. Let's say 200 containers per month, 300 containers per month. Practically, it is impossible to track each uh, point, when
Hmm.
it get in, get out, when actually it was planned, when actually it came, what is the difference from the planned date to actual date, how many transits it did, was it planned or it was a forced transit, how much time did it take in sea, when it reached. All these questions people ask. You have to, if you have to analyze the performance of your lines, for example. Now that data capturing, okay, can you do that? Yes, you can. You ask 10 people to sit with you and keep clicking on those links every day and keep writing all those data. That is possible. Okay.
Hmm.
But is it practical? I don't think it is practical.
Yes, that's
But
that's
when
fair.
you are using technology, then you say, okay, I want this data, and technology tells you, okay, boss, this is it is. And
Hmm.
I have, let's say, 1 year data with click of button,
Hmm.
and I can do that analysis in 3 days.
Hmm.
If you ask me 2 years back, if I have to do that analysis, it may be very, very difficult for me to get that data itself. So how? So you just analyze. Okay, I actually wanted the ETA of this, and actually the ETA is this much. This was the delay. Why this happened? Where? What were the driving forces? What are the action points? I don't think we can do that. But today I have that.
Hmm.
That is how people have to look at it, and that is why I said, investing in technology is now a new thing, at least
Hmm.
in the supply chain domain.
Well said, sir. And specifically when it comes to in terms of freight, when it comes to focusing on a long-term tenders versus going into a spot market, what are some key strategies in terms of freight procurement that you're doing now? And it may be different for some markets. Maybe different from US, maybe it's very contract based, maybe different from Southeast Asia, which is very spot based. What are some key strategies that you're using and why?
See, okay, there is no one strategy which we are using for, let's say, one particular market. For US in particular, let's say we have certain geographies where we have decided that we will do contracts, because historically that is how it worked for us. But from certain parts of the world, we feel that okay, contractually it actually don't work. So we actually remain on spot. So that has a lot to do with historically how it has happened, and but the challenge always will be on a new geography, how to do that. So that is something which you try and it's a hit and try basis, and of course, then you look at the articles you have look at the data you have, because again, when you go to technology, it will tell you contractually this is how it has moved, spotted this is how it has moved. So generally what people prefer. So you will say if 80% of the people are doing contracts, it should have worked for them. So it should work for me also. But this you will not know if you are just within your data system, right? How will you know? If you want to know that, you have to enter into that field and you have to invest into that technology to understand that. So for me, if you ask me, not everything works for everyone, but it has to be historically proven. And sometimes you have to take that decision yourself. Okay, I understand that. But then you have to be ready to change your decision mid-course correction if you feel that strategy is not working. No strategy may work for everyone every time, but you have to be flexible enough to change whenever you want.
Yes, sir. So great. So final question from my end. There are a lot of questions people have asked from the audience. So we'll take that after that. We should spend at least 20-25 minutes on that. So final question from my end, like some of our customers, and in fact, a lot of our customers, specifically in this part of the world, India, Southeast Asia, suddenly because of COVID, they were going home, they had to work from home. And as a result of which, a lot of payment processes were getting delayed. That is, properly sending invoices, receiving invoices, reconciling invoices. Because earlier, the earlier modus operandi was that they were sitting in the office and the team was doing that, right?
Correct.
So, what is your take in that? How, can technology help in this area, and how?
Oh, of course. I mean, I would concede there that okay, this is something which has come to me many times. And I have always thought, why will it add value? You have to reconcile. I mean, we have a contract or we have a spot agreement, whatever it is. We have agreed for a freight. Let's say, if it's a shipping line bill, then ultimately it has to fall in place. And these are shipping lines. Why will they make mistakes? But then let us start believing that we are all human. We can make mistakes, and there is no harm in making mistakes unless you are repeating. That is one. So, okay, humanly you can do that, but let's say 1,000 bills you have to check one by one. You can also miss. So you will have a checker, then you have a final checker on top of him. Then it goes to traditionally what will happen that okay, it will come to supply chain. Somebody in supply chain will check them. Then somebody higher up will do some sample checking. Okay, out of 1,000, let me check 20. Is it correctly done or not? Chances of another the one which he left, is there any mistake or not? You can't say that there are no mistakes. Right? Then it goes to accounts. The accounts team will actually drill it down and they will do it everything.
Yes.
But when you do digitally, then at least computer does not know anyone, right? He does not know who I am, who you are. They say, okay, this is how it looked like, and this is how it has been presented. Is it same or not? Is it matching? And if it matches, it says it passes. If it does not match, it will say, okay, there's a difference. So at least then what happens is that out of those 1,000, if you have taken out only 20, which has difference, then you have a easier work to do. Instead of doing all those 980 invoices to check, you are just checking 20 in detail. So I think that should help, and that is what everyone is now looking at. And there are a lot of talks about it, invoice reconciliation, invoice generation on platform. Let's say that if you do an auction on, for example, GoCommit, if you are doing an auction in GoCommit, why not give your orders also on GoCommit? Then it automatically gets, the data flows.
The data
So
flows.
seamlessness has to happen, and that we have seen it in India. Let's say Reliance and all, they tell us that okay, you pay and then you please put everything online. So their data is reconciled. At the day end, they know okay, there's nothing on okay. There are mails chain still, but you have to put everything, your bank reference number, your amount, and all that. So it gets reconciled then and there. So this is how technology. I mean, technology is not for removing people; it is making them efficient.
On that thought, sir, the new narrative around technology is that it should not be just focused on budget, and the technology budget should not just be focused on ROI. That means initially the thing was like, okay, if you invest $10 in technology, you should make either cost reductions, savings, or business worth of say $100, right? 10x maybe or 5x, right? That was the earlier narrative. But the new narrative is that technology is more of an insurance rather than just focused on ROI, etc. Because in the fast-moving world, plus with the pandemic happening, it's more of an insurance to basically stay in the business, to make sure that the business is good, make sure that the business is healthy and continual. Right. So, what are your thoughts on that? Yeah. What is your personal take on that?
I would say that yes, these thoughts are changing, and I would agree to that. That a lot of resistance used to be there when you are going for technology on a service field, right? If you are in a manufacturing setup, you want to invest technologically into manufacturing. There is a general buy-in because you can actually show that this is the production improvement you can do by doing this, or let's say. But then it is always like investing into technology in the service sector, let's say in the supply chain, is always a question. It's like a marketing campaign, that how much business do you get if you do this ad. How do you determine that? Okay, there should be tools to determine that, but how do you determine that okay, my efficiency of supply chain has gone up by investing into technology? And how do you put money to that is a very, very difficult question to answer. To simply put, I think the mindsets have started changing because the need have started changing. With COVID, everyone wanted to know where is my shipment, right? And everybody, your customer wanted to know where is my shipment because they were worried, is it getting stuck? Am I getting it on time, or is there a problem somewhere? We were getting worried about what is happening to my shipment. Now, how earlier we used to say, okay, I'll tell my team what happened to that shipment. That's okay, I'll check. They'll call up the freight forwarder. The freight forwarder will say, okay, I'll check. He will call up the shipping line. The shipping line will look at the data and say, okay, it is not updated, let me check. So there are let me checks. But ultimately, it is the shipping line who has to respond, right? If they are updating their data, so all those people will come back. The shipping line will tell the forwarder will tell you, the person will tell me. If you are online, let's say GoCommit, then what happens that you say, okay, what you have put all those containers on tracking. Everything which is getting updated on the shipping line website gets updated there. So you get a email, alert, your customer can get it. So everyone is being informed. So for everyone, it becomes okay, I am getting my information, I'm fine. Okay, it is getting stuck at Malaysia, what happened? So you start looking at why is it stuck at Malaysia? Our container got stuck at Malaysia. We realized that okay, it has stuck, and it is a lockdown. It cannot happen. Nothing can be done there. Then we said, okay, fine. This container is stuck. It cannot come. Let's do an alternate immediately. So within a week, or let's say within less than 7 days, you knew that this is not going to move for more than 1 month now. So you have to do something alternate to cover up for it. Now, if you don't have that feedback system, your phones are not getting answered, how will you know? If you don't know, you are not prepared. So I'm not saying that, okay, technology helped you to get that container space in advance. It gave you a head start that, okay, something is wrong. You have to plan alternate. Please be ready with your plan B. Otherwise, you will get stuck. So that's how I think and that is how you will, and then for people like us, we'll have to start putting that into numbers and into transforming that. Okay, this is my ROI. I anticipated this because I had this information, and we created a alternate, so the plant kept running. Otherwise, the plant would have stopped this much of loss. These are things you have to do.
Oh, thanks, sir. That's really helpful. So there are a lot of questions from the audience. Let's take that. So the first question is India is witnessing space and equipment shortage across all the major ports. Okay, that is really happening during the pandemic. First, what is the impact of this situation? And second, is online freight procurement helping you in this situation?
But there are two factors. It's not India. I think Southeast Asia is witnessing a lot of issue,
Yeah.
and a lot of it goes. The credit should be taken by China, and let's say that the demand was so low for first 5 months that people didn't stop production, right? So there were inventories piled up, and suddenly when the markets open up, the demand to dispatch increased, and especially from China. So there were a lot of mother vessels which used to originate from China, which had space, which will take material from Singapore, India, and all that space, which started missing. They started getting into miss sailings a lot. Let's say blank sailings, because they were going full from China. So the movement of containers, the empty containers, got into an issue. So the whole supply chain, the whole cycle got disrupted. So I think this is a temporary phenomena which should get corrected. What online thing can help you is that it can give you a head start. Okay, this is something which there are congestions. So there are tools which tell you, okay, these are congestions. These are ports where congestions are increasing. And then it is up to you to try and see what does it mean to your business. That, okay, if let's say there is congestion going to be happening in Singapore and Malaysia, can I take another route? Can I route it through? So for us, for example, from Thailand, when we saw that Malaysia is becoming a problem, we started routing from China. We started taking, okay, we know that Malaysia, it will get stuck. So why to send it there? Let us reroute it through Korea. I mean, these are the things which you can do. And this you will do only, there is one is that, okay, your container gets stuck, then you get to know. As they say, it is not required for you to fell down to understand that there is a roadblock or something. Yeah. If others are falling, you observe them and try and see, okay, there's something wrong, we need to course correct. And that is what the online system tells you, right? So it tells you that something is not right. You have to take action. It's like Google Map. So there are a lot of people who got stuck in the traffic. They will start showing that data. Okay, I'm stuck in the traffic, and you start seeing those red lines in the Google Map. It's not that you are actually far away from there. Google's tell you that half an hour after this there is a road jam. If you can course correct, you can actually course correct. So it is not going to put a wing on your car and you can fly.
That's true. Another question is like, what software tools are you using these days? I mean,
there are plenty. If you start looking at the net, there are a lot of startups which has come up. There are a lot of established tools which have come up. I would say that, okay, I mean, it will become, because we are sitting in GoComment talking to you, but okay, for us, GoComment has worked so far. But to really pinpoint a tool, it is all personal requirement and choice. But yes, there are multiple tools which are available right now. Some may work for us, some may not work for us. Okay, we went for that which feature is good to go.
Like if you can suggest a few, okay, one, thank you, GoComet is one, but apart from that, any other tools that you're using have worked really well for us? Any
We have been using a lot of tools for auctioning, not for freight, to be very frank. So GoComet is the first tool which we use, and then we actually developed a few in-house tools which we're using in US. So if you ask me frankly, I will not be able to answer you what tools to be suggest. I keep getting those emails daily basis. I have had minimum 10 demos since the time I came back to India. Which one to suggest is a difficult choice.
I understand. And
I'm sorry, I'm sure I have not answered that question, but I think it is.
no worries, sir, no worries. Then
GoComet, they can always try.
Thank you, sir. So there are a few questions which have already been covered in the talk, how is technology helping you, and all these things. One, I would take one last question and then we can call it off. So for forwarder or vendor engagement, don't you think it is better to engage with your known forwarder as they know your business really well, or is an RFQ still needed to build relationships with new forwarders? What are your thoughts?
When you are doing a one-to-one discussion, then of course those relationship works, right? You call them up, you tell them, yeah, this freight is not working for me. Please work out a good freight, and they'll try and do it for you because it's a relationship game. With technology, what happens is that the platform is open for all, and whosoever can give you a best rate, they will ultimately. Then it goes to your decision that what is best, service or cost, and then you weigh your decision on to that. To me, if you look at it, that I will still say that to keep the transparency going, the RFQ RFP process has to be followed. But then you can actually, you are free to take that decision that, okay, I weigh relationship more than the cost, or the differential in the cost is that much I can absorb, and okay, I can. So that is how relationship will work, is that, okay, you can actually tell your preferred forwarder, let's say that, okay, boss, I am getting this freight. If you can match it, I will give it to you. But to me, losing just on relationship, it does not really, it should not work. I mean, because then both of you become complacent, right? He will also not work, you will also not work. He will also feel that Polyplex is my business, it will not go anywhere. And you will also start believing that whatever he is doing is the best.
Yes.
So challenge and to be challenged is something which if we don't do, then the good things does not come out of it.
That's true.
If you have to improve, you have to keep yourself challenging yourself and challenge the environment.
Last question, sir. One more question just came. How is Polyplex planning on budgets for supply chain? I know you can't tell exactly, but if you can tell us how you think about it, specifically for the future.
I can tell you is that, okay, as I said during the call also, that the way we used to think has changed, and we have started looking at technology more openly. And we are now looking at, okay, how can we technologically make things better? So it is not just that we want to service our customer. It's not a phrase. This is something which we believe in. And now we are ready to invest into technology if it serves better to my customers.
I understand. Okay.
So that's how I can't put a number to it, but yes, I will say that traditionally what used to be our spend, it has to be a little better than that, because you have to spend on technology also. And we are now open to that idea as a company.
Okay. Great, sir. I think thanks a lot. This is the end. We had a nice discussion, covered a lot of topics. I would have loved to, pick your brain on a lot more topics in general. It's always really good to interact with you. Thanks to everyone who has attended. Thanks a lot for all your time. We will come back with new webinars soon, maybe touching different topics.